Welcome back to the Art and Skill of Coaching, where I teach you how to actually coach. And today kicks off our 4-part Master Coach series, celebrating 200 episodes on this podcast. And we're starting off with a topic I consider foundational, and it's the skills most coaches think they have, but really don't. This episode matters because so many coaches over-rely on their soft skills, their natural empathy, their intuition, being a good listener. And although those skills are essential and a non-negotiable to be a great coach, they're not enough to create consistent, repeatable change. Because coaching is a skill set. There is a science behind change, there's psychology behind behavior, and there are tangible, structured, scientifically backed tools, methods, and strategies that have been studied that make the practice of coaching effective and predictable. And when coaches don't know that, they over-leverage the relationship, the client's motivation, and their own likability instead of their skill set. So today we're going to ground ourselves in the actual skills that make a great coach, which are pattern recognition, nervous system regulation, creating real safety, and proper questioning strategy. This episode is going to give you tangible tools that you can use in your sessions immediately and set the tone for this entire Master Coach series that we're going to run with till the end of the year. Let's start with this. Most coaches want to help and their heart is in the right place, but they end up creating sessions that feel supportive rather than transformative. Clients might leave feeling good and seen but not changed, and feeling good is not the same as changing or growing. I literally had a consultation the other day with this guy who is working with someone, but reached out to me and said, I like the person I'm working with, but I'm not really getting anything out of the sessions. They're a nice person, but I'm not learning. I don't feel challenged. I'm not growing. And I'm sure you've heard of something similar, or unfortunately might have even experienced that yourself. And that's because your coaching is valuable when your client's behaviors, patterns, and identities, and therefore outcomes begin to shift, not just their immediate mood or feelings. And this matters because if you don't understand the deeper mechanisms behind human behavior, you're going to end up coaching the symptoms instead of the systems. You're going to coach on procrastination and time management instead of underlying fear. You're going to coach on perfectionism and anxiety instead of the shame that drives it. And that's what we're going to really work through and dismantle. But before we dive in, let's call a spade a spade. Most coaches are taught that good coaching is to hold space and just ask good questions and be curious and create a safe container and trust your intuition. And those are great intentions, but intention does not always and automatically translate to a great impact. So these basic methods are going to fall apart when a client's dysregulated. That requires skill. When a client is ruminating or stuck in these mental loops or stories, it's not going to work if a client is performing for validation or if they lack self-awareness or don't understand their own patterns or tend to underreport in the sessions. And it's not going to work if the coach doesn't know how to track that and intervene appropriately. Because again, coaching is deeper than just making a client feel better. It's about helping a client change, and that change requires skill. So without further ado, here are the 4 skills that coaches think they have but don't. And we're going to break these down using psychology, giving you some tangible tools, and of course, some examples. Let's start with skill number 1, pattern recognition. So a lot of coaches might think they're quote unquote noticing patterns, but what they're actually doing is noticing behaviors. Pattern recognition actually requires a few more things: consistency between sessions, a basic understanding of psychology, and knowing what to look for. So let me break these down one by one. When I talk about consistency between sessions, if every session feels like a fresh start, or we're just dealing with the crisis of the week or however you're feeling that day, you're not actually tracking anything. It's very important to have structured assessments, check-ins, and continuity between sessions. It's also important to have a basic understanding of psychology. I'm not saying you need a PhD or to be a psychologist, but clients typically present with universal thinking errors. Okay, we're all human. And regardless of the circumstance, there are some typical patterns and predictable safety strategies and common behavioral loops that it's important to understand as a coach so that we can identify and support clients in disrupting and reframing. And if you don't know the categories, you can't see and identify and therefore disrupt the pattern. And that's why I'm saying it's important to understand what to actually look for. It's not just the behavior. You're looking for themes. You're looking for contradictions. You're looking for defenses and avoidance strategies. You're looking for identity statements and nervous system cues and those universal thinking errors that are very common with clients. So let me give you an example of what I'm talking about here. Let's say a client comes in and they're saying, I procrastinate, I need time management if I'm going to keep this role. A new coach might work on motivation and time management skills, but a skilled coach is going to take the time to really go beneath the symptoms and identify the systems here and maybe get to the point of that client is delaying task when they feel inadequate. That's a different problem. And if it's a different problem, it's a different intervention and therefore a different outcome, but it's actually going to be one that works because it addressed the root issue. So let me give you a really quick tool that's going to help you with better pattern recognition. Like I said, not only am I going to call out the 4 skills that a lot of coaches think they have but don't, but I'm going to give you an antidote for each. So if you are a note taker, take some notes. Let's call this CPP. Content, process, and pattern. So here's what you want to listen for. You want to listen for the content. What is the client actually saying? What happened? What were the circumstances? Gather details around the actions and the behaviors, as well as P, the process. How did they say it? How do they share that information? What were they feeling? Are there any underlying emotions driving that behavior? And then over time, you want to start looking for the pattern. Why does this keep happening? What's the underlying belief that causes them to react in these predictable ways? What is the need getting met that is making them act in unwanted ways? Now, we teach a lot of frameworks like this inside of the Art and Skill of Coaching, and it's foundational to phase 1 of our science-backed coaching modality, but I'm not going to spend too much time here because this series is going to be jam-packed, and we actually have a 7-month training program for coaches who really want to master these skills. So let's go ahead and dive into skill number 2 that a lot of coaches could learn more about, and that is nervous system awareness and regulation. What I've noticed is that a lot of coaches will confuse calming down with regulation, but they're two different things. Regulation is the ability to notice activation as it's happening and to help clients be able to stay in what we call their window of tolerance, which doesn't mean that they feel good all the time. It just means that they're able to manage the discomfort and ideally build the skill set to expand that window over time and return to their center after activation. This is more than just taking a deep breath, dance to your favorite song. Can we help you feel calm as quick as possible? Those things do help, but they're surface tools. Again, it's deeper than feeling calm. It's about regulation. And there are some evidence-based methods that really do help support clients in learning these regulation skills. Some of them revolve around DBT skills, which is dialectical behavioral therapy, mindfulness when correctly applied, particularly mindfulness-based stress reduction, distress tolerance work, things like urge surfing, grounding protocols, cognitive diffusion. These are all things that you can read about from credible sources. I even have a few podcast episodes where I teach some of these things. So if this is an area of improvement for you, scroll. There are 200 episodes here and over 50 hours of free scientifically based content for you to binge. So if you scroll back, I'm sure that you can find podcast episodes explaining each of those regulation skills. But here is why building this skill set is so important. A dysregulated brain cannot access insight. It can't grow, it can't heal. When your client is activated, they're actually not coachable. And so a simple way to start implementing this into your coaching is by starting your sessions with a 15-second regulation check-in. And this could be as simple as asking them, hey, before we dive in today, how activated or how calm do you feel on a scale from 1 to 10? And adjusting your coaching accordingly and making sure that you're doing any grounding and regulation that's needed before you immediately move into any cognitive or behavioral interventions. Let's talk about skill number 3. Coaches talk nonstop about quote unquote safe containers, yet most don't actually know how to create one. Because safety is not being friendly, it's not agreeing with the client or avoiding discomfort or having good rapport and chit chat and holding space. Safety comes from leadership. It comes from consistent structure, clear boundaries, predictable frameworks, strong pacing, skillful challenging, and repairing ruptures, not the absence of them. Simply put, clients feel safest when they trust that the coach knows what they're doing, not when the coach is nice. And one easy way that you can create real safety with your client today is at the beginning of the coaching relationship, whether that's the consultation, your onboarding process, or the first few sessions, you explicitly outline what you can expect from me, what you expect from them, and how you will manage difficult moments. And ideally, have structured check-ins so that the client knows that if anything's coming up, they have a safe space to share that, because predictability translates to safety for most clients. And this can be done in a coaching agreement, again, your onboarding process, or talked about on your first session. And if this feels overwhelming or like an area of improvement, definitely check out ASC, because we actually spend an entire 2 months on your back office before we dive into the advanced coaching techniques. And the reason why is because it's important for you to have a really strong business structure to support clients in this vulnerable work. So that includes things like contracts and coaching agreements and onboarding assessments and what your session structure and program outline is going to be, and so much more. But let's dive into skill number 4, which is proper questioning. So it kind of is nails on a chalkboard for me when I hear just be curious. That's not a coaching method, okay? Curiosity without a framework, without a skill set, actually creates leading questions. It creates circular conversations that don't move the client deeper or forward. It sets the tone for unnecessary emotional digging without any purpose or direction that could re-trigger a client. It does not protect clients from projection. It creates overwhelm for some. And worse, a client can create insight with you being a curious George, but not any opportunities for integration. Great questions are actually open. They're neutral, they're well-paced, they're non-leading, they're oriented towards clarity, not just solutions or change behavior, and they move a client either deeper or forward, ideally both directions at the same time, and they have intention that are deeper than just curiosity and gathering information. So let me give you an example of what I mean. Instead of asking a client, why do you think you're like this? Or why do you think you reacted that way? That potentially could be activating, shaming. It's also pretty vague. A better question might sound something like, what needs got met in that moment that caused you to act out of alignment with your highest values? I hope you can hear the difference. And if you hear that and you're like, I don't know how to do that, I feel really unsure how to ask questions like this, here's a really easy tool. Like I said, I'm going to give you some really powerful, simple, but tangible antidotes today. It's a version of the 4 quadrants of directional questioning. And it's to ask questions in this order, which help clarify, disrupt, reframe, and integrate. What do I mean by that? Well, questions that clarify make sure that you actually understand the client, not just what you think they said or how you interpreted it. And sometimes that alone, asking a clarifying question or just repeating back what the client said, is enough to have the client pause, reflect, and create insight or disrupt that thought. But there's also questions that specifically disrupt thoughts by creating what we call healthy discrepancy. And here we are, without judgment, very neutrally evaluating the validity of any thoughts or reactions. We're exploring the meaning and purpose or helpfulness of any thoughts, feelings, or actions. And when appropriate, we can reframe. So we ask questions to invite the client in to create new perspectives or consider alternatives. And if that resonates with them, we want to ask questions to help them integrate, which is the last step. How can they embody? Asking them how can they practice, honor, or integrate that new awareness to create meaningful change for them. Coaches who master this, skillful questioning, become unshakably effective and highly in demand. And when you understand these 4 skills and integrate them into your practice, your coaching is going to move from friendly and supportive to transformational and in demand. Your clients are going to change faster, patterns are going to become clear, insights are going to become embodied, and their confidence is going to grow, and your sessions are going to become precise, not just fluffy or lucky. Okay, so here are the 4 skills that are really important if you want to master the skill set of coaching. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Part 1 of our 4-part Master Coach series to celebrate 200 episodes on this podcast. And I'm telling you this, if this episode resonated with you, this is just the beginning, okay? You want to stay tuned for parts 2 through 4 and definitely check out the Art and Skill of Coaching, our advanced training program that teaches you a complete coaching framework that's rooted in psychology, neuroscience, and tangible coaching tools like the ones I shared with you today. Our spring class opens soon, so I definitely encourage you to join the wait list. I'll throw the link in the show notes so that you can stay informed on important dates and details. But thank you so much for being here today and tuning in and celebrating 200 episodes of the podcast with me. Please take 30 seconds to leave us a 5-star review, write something kind, or send me a message about what you want to learn next. And definitely hit subscribe so that you never miss another training to help you master the art and skill of coaching.